Hey guys, welcome back to the Friday Vlog, where we discuss activity that goes on here with the BuzzWeaver channel. That includes things like current events, headlines that are in the news, pop culture, social media technology, and items of interest that come up during the week that allow us to have a little bit of a dialogue. If this is your first time here to the channel, I'd like to welcome you guys here. And if you are following on DTube, BitChute, and or Parlay, I would ask you guys to give me a follow there as well. And if you are watching this here on YouTube, of course, you can click on that icon right there in the bottom right-hand corner to subscribe, along with notifications. That way you guys will know when there's content here on the channel, as well as the Friday Vlogs. In gaming news this week, I did pick up the Frontier Pass for Civilization 6, which introduces the apocalyptic mode as well as secret societies. We have new skins for Teddy Roosevelt as well as Catherine. So a lot of new additions and content for Civilization 6. And I am playing some off-camera games right now, but I do plan on introducing some games to the channel here very soon. So you guys who have enjoyed some of the Civilization 6 coverage, you guys will be able to watch some of that. And in Call of Duty, it looks like next Wednesday of all days, we will get Season 5, which will probably be the last season for Call of Duty Modern Warfare. But nonetheless, for those who haven't completed their officer challenges, they have introduced Shipment 24/7 as well as Shoot House 24/7, so those guys can continue to get unlocks and so forth that we need for the game. And of course, we will probably have double experience coming up on this weekend, so be looking out for that. But nonetheless, guys, I am very much looking forward to bringing back Civilization 6 to the channel once again. We have had a lot of leading stories and news this week, and I just wanted to say that if you have been following the channel for the last 2.5 years, or if you are a follower of a lot of the political commentary here for the last 3 years, then you are now seeing a lot of what we have talked about as we have gotten closer to the election. Now, I want to go back to Portland because we had some very interesting activity happen there this week and as of this recording. But you guys have to remember that the courthouse there in Portland had been under siege for 39 days before the president had even decided to go there. And so now, if we go back to what Ted Wheeler, the mayor of Portland, said back on the 16th, I'm going to read this to you. A number of people have asked if I know DHS leadership is in town and if I'm going to meet with them. We're aware that they are here. We wish they weren't. We haven't been invited to meet with them, and if we were, we would decline. Now, as we have talked about here for the last 3 weeks, this sort of activity has not been looking very positive for the progressives and the allegedly peaceful protester types that have been rioting. So it's not been looking good for them. As we have talked about, when the American people feel anxious and concerned about the future and what's going to happen in our country, they have a tendency to lean towards Republicans and in particular towards the president. So they had to come up with a new device. They had to come up with a face-saving device and plan. And this is the tweet that came out on the 27th, on Monday, July the 27th, from Mayor Ted Wheeler. He says, Commissioner Joanne and I are calling for an immediate meeting with Department of Homeland Security. Remember, they weren't going to speak with them even if they were invited by Homeland Security, so they had no intention of speaking to them. Of course, this is, before they obviously saw what was unfolding. So I apologize for that interruption. Let me start from the beginning. So, Commissioner Joanne and I are calling for an immediate meeting with Department of Homeland Security leadership on the ground in Portland and with Acting Secretary DHS Wolf to discuss a ceasefire and the removal of heightened federal forces from Portland. Now, what this suggests in a ceasefire is that you are negotiating for a group. And we have always contended here that Ted Wheeler is basically the field marshal for Antifa and or rioters and or the types of activity that go on there, because not only is he the mayor, he is also the marshal for the police. He's the head of the police department there. And so he's basically saying here, as he goes into the ceasefire, that he's willing to negotiate, which means that he at any time could have ended this, right? Think about it. Think about it for a moment. If you don't attack a federal building, it doesn't require that there be any defense there. So, as we said before, this was something that they actually wanted. They wanted the president to respond to the situation so they could scream fascist and then feign victimhood. But we have seen what they have actually done. But more importantly, the American people and the world have seen what these rioters have actually done. So this ceasefire is a face-saving maneuver by Wheeler, because he knows he has lost the propaganda war. He has lost the propaganda war. And so now he's asking for a ceasefire. Now, the president ended up looking like he's an individual who is the law and order president in this situation. Now, of course, that's all going to depend on who you ask. As of this week, as of Tuesday, the House Judiciary Committee, headed by Jerry Nadler, of course, brought out William Barr, the Attorney General here in the United States, where he was asking him questions about the federal government's activity in Portland, which is within the jurisdiction of the federal government. And so, of course, Barr's like, is it okay if we defend our property? He roasted those individuals. I don't know if you saw the Judiciary Committee meetings, but he was civil, he was cordial, he was polite, he was cogent, he was sober, and he answered their questions. As a matter of fact, he tried to answer their questions, but they kept injecting because, of course, they have a narrative, and they knew, just like when they tried to impeach the president, they knew they couldn't remove him, but they did it anyway for yet another ability for them to portray the president in a negative light, as well as Attorney General Bob Barr, and it failed yet again. This is why we see Ted Wheeler asking for a ceasefire, because they need to save face. It is looking ugly for them. Now, I want to read from one of the, I think this is from the director of the Homeland Security that was heading up the activities there in Portland. And it's very important that I read this to you guys. As the night goes on, the rioters become so hateful, it is surreal. Their voices hoarse, their sentences jumble. They seem almost catatonic with hate, said the agent of the Portland clashes that have nearly reached 60 straight nights. A totally surreal experience. You get large, nonviolent demonstrators where people march, they chant, they give speeches, then shortly after are replaced with a smaller crowd, though still large, who immediately start trying to break into and destroy the federal courthouse. They have transposed their hatred for the president and for law enforcement onto the physical structure of the federal courthouse and the uniformed personnel whose job it is to protect the courthouse, the agent told the Center for Immigration Studies. The agent assigned to protect Portland's Mark O. Hatsfield U.S. Courthouse talked to the center's national security fellow Todd Benjamin to reveal the experience of the agent under attack every night. I apologize, guys, the lighting is not that great right now, and I'm having a hard time seeing this, so bear with me. If federal law enforcement leaves, we lose face, but we walk away with stacks of overtime pay, and we get to go home. Portland wins. They get to say they defeated Trump, and they will have caused tens of millions of monetary loss to their downtown local businesses, and will have ransacked and torched a courthouse in the heart of the city. So here you have a situation, and some have been calling this kind of the battle of the suburbs, because as you saw, as part of the tactics there, they had the line of moms and then the line of vets who were basically just there kind of as part of the scene, as though the rioters were trying to be portrayed as civil at the time. As he says there are people there that are peaceful protesters, but it's going to be those few that are making all of them look bad, but they are essentially complicit within it because they aren't actually trying to stop the individuals from doing what they're doing, just like Wheeler could have done, as we see when he showed his hand and said, we need to call on a ceasefire. And as I mentioned earlier, during the House committee meetings, William Barr basically destroyed and roasted these Democrats by outlining the very reasons why he was there, and the American people can see it. But as I said, guys, I will leave links to this article below the video, as well as additional content, so you guys can check that out for yourselves. As we get closer to the 2020 election, much of what we talked about is starting to unfold. So let me go straight to this Breitbart article, which I will link below the video. Many of you have probably heard about this, but I want to read a little bit from it, as well as give you a little bit more detail and even show video for you there in the background. So Facebook has removed a video posted by Breitbart News earlier today, which was the top performing Facebook post in the world Monday afternoon, of a press conference in D.C. held by a group of American frontline doctors and organized and sponsored by the Tea Party Patriots. The press conference featured Republican Ralph Norman of South Carolina and frontline doctors sharing their views and opinions on the virus that I can't mention here or I'll get demonetized, and the medical response to the pandemic. YouTube, which is owned by Google and Twitter, subsequently removed footage of the press conference as well. Very much as we talked about what was going to happen, right? The live stream had accumulated over 17 million views by the time of its censorship by Facebook. Over 185,000 views were concurrently, or I should say over 185,000 viewers were concurrently watching the stream when it aired live Monday afternoon. The event, hosted by the organization, as I said earlier, American Frontline Doctors, a group founded by Dr. Simon Gold, a board-certified physician and attorney, and made up of medical doctors, came together to address what the group calls the massive disinformation campaign about the illness. Norman also spoke at the event. And what's important here, as we have talked about, as we had anticipated, that there would be levels of censorship, levels of control. Now, if you saw the press conference later that day with Kaylee, you would see that one of the journalists asked about one of the particular doctors who was talking about the particular product that I'm not sure I can mention here that starts with an H. And they were, asking the president, kind of badgering him about it. And the president, just like with Donald Trump Jr., who had his account suspended temporarily on Twitter, they were basically saying, hey, look at the contrast between what some of the medical community members are saying and what these medical community members are saying. So it wasn't as though the president was backing these particular doctors or Donald Trump Jr. They were simply saying, look at the particular contrast between what is often reported by the media and what these particular doctors are saying, to give kind of contrast like we do here on this channel. We want to give people levels of detail. It doesn't necessarily mean that I entirely support some of the activity that goes on or that I am encouraging this type of activity. I'm simply giving you guys descriptions and outlines. So Kevin Ross, tech columnist for the New York Times, reporter of Rabbit Hole podcast, tweeted out to Facebook in response to it being removed. He says, the video appears to have been taken down from Facebook. Andy Stone, who works in communications for Facebook, replied, yes, we removed it for sharing false information and cures and treatments for the illness, but the number 19. Facebook's decision to censor the live stream was quickly followed by YouTube, the Google-owned video sharing platform. The video had over 80,000 views on YouTube prior to the removal. That's a pretty decent amount of number. Following Facebook and YouTube's removal of the video, Twitter followed suit, removing Breitbart's News Periscope live stream and the press conference. Jack Dorsey's platform, of course, Twitter, also then limited the Breitbart News official account, including the tweets containing links to multiple stories about the press conference, violate the platform's illness policies. Now, it's difficult to say what it actually was that the doctor said. Now, if you watch the video, then you see that the doctors go into various different discussions about the particular pandemic, how the president is addressing it, how it's been addressed, where levels of misinformation has come. But it could be fair to say that because it's not following a certain narrative by certain groups of individuals, and because it was live streamed via Periscope, and normally the media gets some level of information prior to these types of newscasts or even like the briefings and so forth, so they can prepare questions and they can prepare their rebuttals and their, as I said a second ago, their rebuttals within their commentary so that they can immediately have stuff prepared. And see, the journalists don't like when things happen like this because they can't get a handle on it. They can't immediately produce any type of content to refute or rebut or question what's going on here. So it's part of that, a little bit of an ego thing for them too, is to be able to get ahead of these sorts of things, because as we know, the media wants to have influence. They are basically a part of the Democratic Party, and they want to ensure that the party looks good. They want to ensure that things aren't being contravened, or because how many times have we seen we need to hear from the medical experts? Democrats saying the president needs to listen to medical experts. Well, he's listening to medical experts. He may not necessarily agree with them either. But again, it was to give a point of contrast. Now, I will leave additional information about this below the video. I can only talk about so much because if it's being shut down, it's being taken down, then of course the video here can be affected. But I did want to bring it up because it was very pivotal. If you haven't had a chance to see it, I'm sure you can probably still see it. But nonetheless, the whole purpose of it was to show what we have talked about now for the last 2.5 years on the channel, how quickly, how effectively, and how eagerly the platforms across social media are willing to take down content that doesn't fit their particular narrative. All right, guys, so that's going to wrap it up for this Friday vlog. I want to thank all of you guys for your continued support. And if you are following this on YouTube, BitChute, and or Parlay, I want to thank and welcome all the new people from Parlay to the channel. If you guys haven't already, give me a follow there as well. And of course, all of you here on YouTube, that would be the channel icon appearing right there on the screen to subscribe, along with notifications. That way you guys will know when there's content here on the channel, as well as the Friday vlogs. And you can, of course, follow me there on social media. Those links will be below this video. And I will see you guys right there behind the camera next week.